Thanksgiving Day was supposed to be about warmth, family, and gratitude. For me, it was the exact opposite. While laughter spilled from the dining room and the smell of roasted turkey drifted through the windows, I was outside, trapped in the brutal cold. 5 degrees. My breath came out in clouds. My teeth chattered so hard I thought they'd break. And yet, nobody came looking for me. Not my mother, not my stepfather, not even my little sister. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to stay alive in just a thin t-shirt and shorts, every second feeling like an eternity. The cold wasn't the worst part, it was the realization that I had been deliberately left out. Cast aside. Like I didn't belong. Finally, numb and furious, I pushed the door open and stepped into the warm glow. Every head turned, and with 6 words, I made their perfect holiday shatter. The cold cut through me like 1,000 knives. My skin stung, then went numb, then burned again as the wind pushed against me. I curled up on the front steps, hugging my knees to my chest, but it didn't help. The thin fabric of my t-shirt clung to me like paper. My shorts offered no shield. My breath came out in shaky clouds, and my fingers were stiff, refusing to bend. I kept glancing at the window, at the golden light spilling from inside. Through the glass, I saw my family gathered around the dining table, my mother, Linda, in her green dress. Richard, my stepfather, sitting tall at the head like he owned the world, and my little sister, Emily, who was giggling at something on her plate. They looked like a picture from a magazine, candles glowing, silverware shining, plates piled with turkey and mashed potatoes. A perfect Thanksgiving scene. Perfect for them. Not for me. I'd been thrown out like garbage. It started that morning, when Richard asked me to baste the turkey while Mom was upstairs fixing her hair. I did as he said, but I must have left the oven door open too long. The skin darkened more than it should have, just slightly burnt at the edges. I thought nothing of it, it still smelled delicious. But when Richard came back into the kitchen, his face twisted with rage. "You ruined Thanksgiving," he snapped, his voice low but deadly. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I stammered. "It's not ruined, it's just a little dark on top." "Don't argue with me." He slammed his hand down on the counter so hard the pepper shaker fell over. "If you can't learn responsibility, then maybe you need a lesson." I froze, my throat tight. His lesson? Throwing me outside? "Stay out there until you've had time to think about what you've done," he ordered. "And don't you dare step back inside until I say so." I looked at Mom hoping she would step in. She opened her mouth but Richard cut her off with a glare. "Linda, don't interfere. She needs this." And just like that, Mom looked away. My own mother turned her back on me. So I walked out the front door, thinking maybe it would be for a few minutes, maybe until he cooled down, but hours passed. The sun sank lower, the air grew sharper. My lips cracked, my hands shook uncontrollably, and the snow began to stick in my hair. Every time I glanced at the window, I saw them laughing, passing plates, refilling glasses of wine. I saw Emily smiling up at Richard, as if he was the hero of the story, while I was the villain outside. The betrayal burned hotter than the cold. I whispered to myself, "Why me? What did I do so wrong?" The words disappeared in the wind. Somewhere deep inside, something snapped. I realized this wasn't just punishment, it was cruelty. And they were fine with it. My mother was fine with it. My stepfather wanted it. My sister didn't even notice. Tears stung my frozen cheeks, but the rage inside me kept me alive. I wasn't going to sit out there until my body gave up. Not anymore. When the clock struck 5, I stood up on trembling legs. I pushed the door open. The warmth hit me like a wall, and every head in the room turned. Forks froze in midair. Conversations died instantly. And I was ready. The room went silent the moment I stepped inside. The warmth of the house wrapped around me, but it didn't feel comforting, it felt suffocating, like I'd broken into a place where I didn't belong. My wet sneakers squeaked against the hardwood floor, leaving little prints of melted snow behind me. All eyes were on me. Richard set down his carving knife with a deliberate clink. His jaw tightened, and the corners of his mouth curled in disgust. "Who told you to come back in?" he asked, voice low but sharp enough to cut glass. I stood there, shivering, my teeth chattering as I tried to speak. I was freezing. That's the point, he snapped, rising from his chair. You needed to learn. Discipline doesn't work if you're comfortable. Emily's fork slipped from her hand, clattering against her plate. She stared at me, wide-eyed, like she didn't recognize her own sister. My mother, Linda, reached for her wine glass but didn't drink. Her hands trembled, and for a second I thought she might finally speak up. But she stayed quiet, eyes fixed on the tablecloth like the patterns there were suddenly fascinating. I swallowed hard. You left me out there for hours. You should have thought about that before you ruined Thanksgiving dinner, Richard cut in. His voice was steady, almost calm, but it carried an edge that made my stomach knot. It was just the skin on the turkey, I said, louder this time. Barely burnt. That's not a reason to throw me outside in 5-degree weather. He stepped closer, towering over me. The smell of wine and roasted meat clung to him. Don't raise your voice in this house, he growled. You've embarrassed your mother, you've embarrassed me. And you've embarrassed this family. Do you think anyone wants a troublemaker at this table? I glanced around. The guests, 2 neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Harris, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They weren't looking at me. They weren't looking at him either. They stared at their plates, as though ignoring the storm would make it pass. I laughed bitterly, though my voice cracked. So, this is family? Leaving me to freeze while you sit here pretending everything's perfect? Linda's glass tipped, spilling a thin stream of red wine onto the white tablecloth. She grabbed a napkin to blot it, her eyes avoiding mine. Amanda, please, she whispered. Not now. Not now? I repeated, my chest tightening. Mom, I was out there for over 4 hours. My fingers are numb. My lips are blue. And you're worried about timing? Richard slammed his hand against the table, rattling the plates and making Emily flinch. Enough. You will not disrespect your mother at her own table. She's not the one being disrespected. I shot back, my voice trembling but loud. I am. For a moment, no one moved. The candles flickered as if even the flames were afraid to breathe. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. Richard leaned closer, his face inches from mine. His eyes were cold, his tone controlled but venomous. If you don't like how things are done in my house, you can leave, permanently. The words hit me harder than the wind outside ever could. I wasn't just an outsider, I was disposable. But I didn't back down. Not this time. I straightened my spine, my voice steadier than I felt. Maybe I will. The cracks in their perfect family portrait were starting to show, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid to point them out. The silence pressed down on me, heavier than the snow outside. Everyone stared, waiting to see if I'd crumble under Richard's threat. My heart raced, but something inside me refused to break this time. I had been left outside like trash, and now they wanted me to eat in silence as if nothing had happened? No, not anymore. I took a shaky step forward, the heat from the fireplace warming my frozen skin but doing nothing to melt the ice in my chest. My voice came out hoarse at first, but steady enough. How could you do this to me? 6 words. That was all it took. The effect was instant. The Harris couple froze mid-bite, forks dangling awkwardly. Emily blinked at me, her eyes glistening with confusion. My mother's napkin slipped from her hand, falling onto her lap as though my words had knocked the air out of her. And Richard went pale, then red, his face twisting like he'd been slapped in front of everyone. What did you just say? He demanded, his voice booming. I locked eyes with him. You heard me. How could you do this to me? How could you lock me out in the freezing cold for hours over a turkey skin? His jaw clenched. Don't exaggerate. It was discipline. You needed to learn responsibility. Responsibility? My voice cracked with disbelief. By nearly freezing me to death? That's not discipline. Richard, that's cruelty. The neighbors shifted in their seats. Mr. Harris cleared his throat like he wanted to speak, but his wife gripped his arm, silently begging him not to get involved. I turned to my mother, desperation burning in my chest. Mom, say something. Please. You saw me sitting out there. You knew. Linda's eyes darted to Richard, then back to me. She opened her mouth, but only a whisper came out. Amanda, don't make this worse. Worse? I laughed bitterly, tears stinging my eyes. How much worse can it get than being abandoned on the porch while you're in here drinking wine and laughing? You're my mother. You're supposed to protect me. Emily's small voice broke the tension. Why was Amanda outside? She looked at Linda, then at Richard. Why didn't she come in? Richard's expression darkened. Because she needed to think about her actions, he snapped. And this conversation is not for children. She is a child, I shot back, pointing to myself. I'm your daughter, Mom, and you let him treat me like this. Linda covered her face with her hands, as if she could hide from the truth. Amanda, please stop. But I didn't. The words poured out, fueled by every bruise, every night of silence, every time I'd been told to shut up and accept my place. You've let him humiliate me, punish me for the smallest mistakes, lock me away like I'm some criminal. Do you even realize what that's done to me? Do you care? Richard slammed his fist against the table, rattling the glasses. That's enough. Sit down before I throw you back out where you belong. I felt a shiver run through me, but I forced myself to hold his stare. Go ahead. Try. Because this time, I won't stay quiet. Everyone here will know exactly what you've done. For a moment, the room was deathly still. The Harris couple exchanged nervous glances. Emily's lip trembled. My mother looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. And Richard seethed, his knuckles white as he gripped the back of his chair. Those 6 words had cracked their perfect Thanksgiving wide open. There was no going back. Richard shoved his chair back with a screech, the wooden legs grinding against the floor. He stood, broad shoulders filling the space like a wall, and glared at me as though daring me to keep speaking. His face was flushed, his jaw tight, veins standing out in his neck. You come into my house, he spat, and you accuse me of cruelty? You ungrateful brat. My house, too, I shot back, my voice trembling but loud. You think I don't belong here? That doesn't give you the right to treat me like garbage. The Harris couple exchanged panicked glances. Mrs. Harris reached for her coat, whispering something about, maybe we should go. But Richard ignored them, his attention locked on me like a predator sizing up prey. You ruined Thanksgiving, Amanda, he growled, pointing a thick finger at me. One responsibility, one simple task, and you couldn't even manage that. You embarrassed your mother in front of our guests, and you embarrassed me. I felt heat rush to my face, part fury, part humiliation. So you punish me by leaving me outside to freeze? That's not embarrassment, Richard. That's abuse. His eyes narrowed dangerously. Watch your mouth. No, I said, standing taller, even though my legs shook beneath me. I'm done watching my mouth. I've been silent too long. You make rules just to watch me fail. You lock me out. You isolate me. And Mom, I turned toward her, my voice cracking. You let him. Every single time. Linda's hands trembled around her napkin. She looked at me with tearful eyes, but quickly shifted her gaze toward Richard, as though waiting for his permission to speak. Amanda, please. Not now. You're making things worse. Worse? I laughed bitterly. Mom, I was outside in 5-degree weather for hours. Hours. My lips were turning blue, and you were worried about turkey and wine. Richard slammed both fists on the table, the plates jumping. Enough! Sit down or get out! The sound made Emily burst into tears. She covered her ears with her little hands, crying out, Stop yelling! Please stop! For the first time, Richard faltered, glancing at her. But then his glare snapped back to me. Look what you've done. You've upset your sister. My chest ached, but I refused to let him twist the truth. No, you upset her. She sees the way you treat me. She hears the shouting, the slamming doors, the punishments. Don't you dare blame me for your cruelty. His hand twitched, and for a terrifying moment, I thought he might actually strike me. The room felt suffocating, every breath thick with fear and anger. I steadied myself, my voice cutting through the tension like glass shattering. You can scream at me, Richard. You can threaten me. But I'm not going to sit outside like some stray dog while you carve turkey and play the perfect family. Not anymore. The Harris couple finally stood. Mr. Harris muttered, We should leave, pulling his wife toward the door. They didn't look at me. They didn't look at him. They just wanted to escape the chaos before it swallowed them too. As the door closed behind them, the house seemed to shrink. Just the 4 of us now, me, Richard, Mom, and Emily, who was still sobbing softly in her chair. Richard leaned closer, his face inches from mine, his voice low and venomous. You think you've won something? You think shouting makes you strong? You'll regret this, Amanda. You don't cross me in my house. I met his glare head on, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then maybe it's not my house anymore. Maybe I'd rather freeze outside than live under your roof one more day. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. My mother gasped softly, as though realizing, maybe for the first time, that she was about to lose her daughter. Richard smirked, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. He wasn't used to me standing up to him. He wasn't used to anyone standing up to him. And for the first time in years, I felt the power shift just slightly, but enough. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Richard's smirk widened, but it wasn't the smile of someone amused, it was the grin of a man convinced he had already won. He leaned in, his shadow stretching across me, filling every inch of the space I had left to breathe. You think you can challenge me? He hissed. You're nothing in this house. Nothing. You eat my food, you live under my roof, and you dare to call me cruel. My heart hammered in my chest, but my anger roared louder than my fear. Your roof? I snapped, my voice shaking but fierce. This was Mom's house before you ever showed up. And you don't get to erase me just because you can't stand that I exist. He slammed his palm against the wall so close to my face that the pictures rattled. Emily screamed, clutching Mom's arm. Mom froze, her face pale, eyes darting between us like a trapped animal. Richard, please, she whispered. Stay out of it, Linda, he barked, his tone cutting her down like a blade. The table stood between us, but I didn't back away. My whole body trembled, half from the cold that still clung to me, half from the fire boiling in my veins. You locked me outside for 4 hours. 4 hours! My voice rose, breaking into a scream. That's not discipline, that's torture. Watch yourself, he warned, stepping around the table. No, I shot back. You watch yourself, because for the first time, I'm not afraid of you anymore. His face darkened. He lunged forward, gripping my arm so tightly I thought his fingers might leave bruises. Pain shot up my shoulder, but I refused to flinch. I stared straight into his eyes. Let me go, I said through gritted teeth. He squeezed harder. Or what? You'll cry? You'll run to your mommy? Mom stood frozen, her hands trembling as she reached toward us, then dropped them again, as if torn between loyalty and terror. Emily sobbed into her napkin, whispering, Stop, please stop. Something inside me snapped. Not with fear this time, with fury. I yanked my arm back as hard as I could, breaking free from his grip. My voice erupted, raw and sharp enough to cut the air. You will never touch me again. The words echoed through the dining room. For the first time, Richard actually looked startled, like the force of my voice had shoved him backward. His jaw clenched, his nostrils flared, but his confidence faltered. You little, he started, but I didn't let him finish. You call this discipline, but it's abuse. You've humiliated me, locked me away, treated me like I'm less than human. And Mom, I turned on her, tears blurring my vision. You let him. You chose him over me again and again. Do you know what that feels like? To sit outside in the freezing dark and realize your own mother won't open the door? Linda's lips quivered, her eyes glossy with tears. She whispered, Amanda, Richard snapped his head toward her. Don't listen to her lies. She's just a spoiled brat trying to turn you against me. Lies? My laugh came out harsh, broken. You want proof? I pulled my sleeve up, showing the faint yellowing bruise on my arm from last week when he shoved me into the wall for forgetting to fold the laundry. That's your discipline, Richard. That's your truth. The room tilted with tension. Emily gasped, clinging tighter to Mom. Linda's hands flew to her mouth, muffling her sob. Richard's face twisted with rage, but I saw the flicker of panic there too. He wasn't in control anymore. I was. You can scream all you want, I said, my voice shaking but stronger than I'd ever heard it. But the truth doesn't change. You left me to freeze. You left me to suffer. And you think I'll stay silent? Not anymore. Everyone in this house knows what you are now. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The candles flickered violently as if reacting to the storm inside us. Then Richard roared, slamming his fist against the wall so hard the plaster cracked. "You're not my daughter!" he bellowed. "You will never be part of my family!" The words cut deep, slicing through the last shred of illusion I had held onto. But instead of breaking me, they hardened me. I stepped closer, my voice quiet but deadly sharp. "Good, because I'd rather be nothing to you than live one more day as your victim." The air in the room snapped, like something fragile had finally shattered. Emily sobbed harder. Mom collapsed into her chair, her shoulders shaking with silent cries. And Richard stood trembling, not from cold, but from fury he could no longer control. This was the breaking point. The moment none of us could ever take back. And I wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. The dining room felt like a war zone after a bomb had gone off. Emily's sobs echoed in the silence. Mom sat pale and trembling, and Richard stood over me with his fists clenched, a storm barely contained. I wiped my tears with the back of my hand, my chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. "You said it yourself, Richard. I'm not your daughter. So stop pretending this is discipline. Stop pretending you care about me at all." He sneered, his lip curling. "You're right. You're nothing to me. A burden. A mistake I should never have let stay in my house." Emily gasped, her tiny voice breaking through the tension. "She's my sister," she cried, sliding off her chair and running to my side. She grabbed my cold hand with her small, warm fingers. "You can't say she's nothing. She's my sister." Richard's face reddened. "Emily, go sit down." But Emily shook her head violently, tears streaming down her cheeks. "No, you're mean. You always yell at Amanda. You always make her cry." Her words cut deeper than mine ever could. For the first time, I saw Richard falter not because of me, but because his carefully constructed world had been pierced by the innocence of a child. I squeezed Emily's hand, my throat tightening. "It's okay," I whispered to her. "You don't have to be afraid anymore." Mom finally rose from her chair, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the table for support. "Richard," she said softly, her voice cracking, "this has gone too far." His head whipped toward her. "Don't you start, Linda. You've always backed me up. Don't change now." She shook her head, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Backed you up?" "No." I stayed silent. I told myself it was discipline, that maybe you were making Amanda stronger, teaching her responsibility. But deep down, her voice faltered. She glanced at me, shame flooding her face. Deep down, I knew it wasn't discipline. It was cruelty. Richard slammed his fist on the table again, but it didn't have the same power as before. "You're letting her poison you against me." "No." Mom's voice steadied. "She's not poisoning me. You are. I've watched her shrink smaller and smaller these past 3 years. I've watched her lose her smile, her confidence. And now I've watched you throw her into freezing weather like she was trash." Richard stepped forward, towering over her. "Careful, Linda. Think about what you're saying." Her chin lifted, and for the first time in years, I saw steel in her eyes. I'm thinking about my daughter, my flesh and blood, who's been suffering under this roof while I pretended not to see it." Emily clung tighter to me, nodding furiously. "Mom, it's true. He's always mean to Amanda. He locked her outside today. What if she got sick? What if she—" Her little voice broke, unable to finish. Richard's voice turned cold. "Enough of this drama. Amanda exaggerates everything. She's always been a liar, twisting stories to get attention." My body trembled with rage. "A liar? Really? Do you want me to show Mom the bruises? Do you want me to remind her of the nights you locked me in the garage? The time you shoved me so hard I couldn't move my arm for days?" Mom's face crumpled, horror flooding her eyes. "Amanda," she whispered. "Why didn't you tell me?" I shook my head, bitter tears spilling over. "I did. I tried. But every time I hinted, you told me I was overreacting. You said Richard was just trying to teach me. You didn't want to believe me." The truth hung heavy in the room. Mom covered her face with her hands and sobbed. Emily wrapped her arms around my waist, whispering, "I believe you. I do." Richard glared at all of us, his voice rising again. "You're tearing this family apart. All of you. You'll regret standing against me. But I saw it now clear as day. His power was crumbling. For the first time, Mom wasn't standing behind him. Emily wasn't scared into silence. And I wasn't shrinking away. I lifted my chin, staring straight at him. The only thing tearing this family apart is you. His eyes blazed, but I no longer felt small under his shadow. The truth was out, and there was no way to shove it back into the dark. The air in the dining room was suffocating, heavy with tension and the smell of roasted turkey that suddenly made me sick. Emily clung to me, Mom cried silently, and Richard paced like a caged animal, his face red and his fists clenched. Then, 3 sharp knocks rattled the front door. The sound cut through the chaos like a blade. Everyone froze. Richard whipped his head toward the door, his expression shifting from fury to suspicion. Another round of knocking followed, firmer this time. And then a voice. "Police! Open the door!" My breath caught in my throat. The neighbors. They must have heard the shouting, the smashing fists, the threats. For once, someone outside these walls had noticed. Richard cursed under his breath. "Stay quiet," he ordered, his tone sharp and commanding. Nobody says a word. But Emily, still clutching me, whispered, "It's the police. Maybe they'll help." As in, I pulled her close, my heart pounding. "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered back. "They will." The knocking grew louder, more insistent. Mom staggered to the door, wiping her face with shaking hands. Richard tried to block her path, but she shoved past him and opened it. 2 officers stood on the porch, snowflakes clinging to their uniforms. Their flashlights scanned the hallway behind us. One officer spoke in a calm but firm voice. "We got reports of shouting and possible domestic disturbance. Is everyone all right here?" Before Richard could speak, I stepped forward. "No," I said, my voice cracking but loud enough to echo through the room. "Everything is not all right." Richard's face turned crimson. "Officer, this girl is lying. She's out of control, making up stories to cause trouble." "She's not lying," Mom interrupted, her voice trembling but stronger than before. She looked at the officers, tears streaking her face. "He locked my daughter outside, in 5-degree weather, for 4 hours." The words hung in the air like thunder. The officers exchanged a look. One pulled out a notepad, jotting things down. "Sir, is that true?" the officer asked Richard. Richard's laugh was harsh, forced. "It was discipline. She ruined dinner. She needed to learn responsibility." "By leaving her outside in freezing temperatures?" the officer pressed, his tone sharp. Richard's jaw tightened. "She exaggerates. She could have come back inside any time." I stepped forward, my fists clenched at my sides. "No, I couldn't." He locked the door. He told Mom not to let me in no matter what. I sat out there until my lips turned blue. "Ask Emily, ask Mom, ask anyone." Emily squeezed my hand and blurted out, "It's true. I saw her through the window. She was shivering and Daddy—" She stopped herself, corrected. "Richard said not to let her in." The younger officer crouched down slightly to Emily's height. "Sweetheart, you did the right thing telling us." Richard snapped. "Don't you dare talk to her. She's just a child." "And children don't lie about freezing on the front porch," the officer countered. Mom's voice cracked again. "It's not the first time. He's locked her in the garage, the basement. He controls everything. When she eats, when she speaks." My chest ached hearing her admit it out loud. Finally, after years of silence, Richard's mask slipped completely. "You're betraying me, Linda. After everything I've given you? You'll regret this." The older officer stepped forward, hand on his cuffs. "That's enough. Sir, you're coming with us for questioning." Richard's eyes bulged. "You can't arrest me in my own house." "It stopped being your house the moment you endangered a child," the officer said flatly. "Turn around, hands behind your back." For the first time, Richard's confidence cracked. His hands shook as he hesitated, but the sight of both officers ready made him comply. They snapped the cuffs on, the sound ringing like victory in my ears. Emily buried her face against me, whispering, "He's really gone?" "Yes," I whispered back, my throat tight with relief. "He's gone." Mom collapsed into a chair, sobbing openly now, not the careful, silent tears of the past, but raw, and real. She looked at me through her tears. "I'm so sorry, Amanda. I should have protected you. I should have listened." I knelt beside her, Emily still pressed against me. "You did tonight. That's what matters. You chose me. You chose us." The officers led Richard out the door, his curses fading into the snowy night. The house finally exhaled, the weight lifting from the walls. And for the first time in years, I felt safe. The night Richard was taken away, the house fell eerily quiet. The turkey sat untouched, the candles flickered down to stubs, and for once the walls weren't trembling with his anger. I remember sitting at the table, Emily curled up against me, Mom across from us with her face buried in her hands. None of us spoke. We were too exhausted, too broken, but somehow strangely relieved. The next morning, we packed what we could. Clothes, a few photos, Emily's stuffed animals, my school books. Mom didn't bother with the fine china or the fancy decorations Richard had insisted on buying. "They don't mean anything," she said softly, almost to herself. They never did. We moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. It wasn't perfect, the carpet was worn, the paint chipped in places, but when I walked through that front door, no one glared at me. No one told me I didn't belong. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a home. The first night there, Mom made spaghetti from a box and heated garlic bread in the oven. We ate crowded around a little kitchen table, mismatched chairs creaking beneath us. Emily slurped her noodles too loudly, sauce splattering across her cheeks. Mom laughed an unguarded, real laugh I hadn't heard in years. The sound filled the room like sunlight. After dinner, Emily tugged me toward the couch. She curled up in my lap, whispering, "You're safe now, right?" I kissed the top of her head, my throat tight. "Yes, Em. We're safe. All of us." That night, lying in my new bed with a blanket Mom had dug out from an old box, I stared at the ceiling and thought about everything that had happened. The cold, the humiliation, the anger, it all still lived in me. But there was something new too. Hope. The weeks passed quickly. Mom found a part-time job at the library, and she seemed lighter, freer, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Emily decorated our little apartment with paper snowflakes and drawings taped to the fridge. As for me, I started writing again, something I'd given up when Richard made me feel like my voice didn't matter. Now, I poured every thought, every wound, every hope onto the page. One afternoon, I came home from school to find Mom sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers. Her eyes were red, but her smile was genuine. "The divorce papers are filed," she said. "It's official. We're free. Free." The word rolled through me like warm sunlight after a long winter. That night, as snow fell softly